Good morning, welcome back. Today we're working on inner fenders, and I'm going to show you how I get the perfect fitment before I TIG weld. Just so you know what I'm doing, this is the passenger side. I just put a panel on right here. I'll show you what we're doing on the driver's side, but like that is, you can barely see, there's hardly anything, and it's rounded over, got a flange, gives it that finished look that we're looking for. But over here is the driver's side, and this is the panel that I got to weld in there. See, it's got a flange. Now I used the shrinker stretcher to do this. This is an inch-long flange. That's quite a bit for, especially for here. That's a lot of material to shrink. Should have probably done a 3/4 inch flange, and would have been perfectly fine. Would have been a lot easier to do that, but I got it done with a 1 inch flange. It looks good, fits good. Now I had it put in the car, set up against the core support how I wanted it, and then I drilled and clecoed it. This is spray Dicom layout fluid. I'm going to take a scribe and scribe along this, and then I'm going to trim it with tin snips, trim the most of it off. Then I'll trim it with some hand snips, and then I'll file it to make sure I got a perfect fitment. The goal is to be consistent with our welding all the way through. If we have inconsistent gaps or cuts, or fitment, then it's going to pull at different strengths, because you're going to have to add more heat, different heat, less heat, more filler wire, and it's not going to be consistent. So we're going to get this as consistent as possible so we can weld it as consistent as possible. So I'm going to get this cut out. I'm going to get it scribed up, get it cut out, and then we'll start fitting it in there, and we'll start tacking it up. First things first. Now this is a carbide tip or tungsten tip scribe. So I'm just going to scribe right along here. That's our cut line. Now the blue Dicom, the layout fluid, is just so we can see our scribe line a lot better. When I pull this off, if you don't know, these are Clecos. They, when you squeeze them, the middle shaft pulls out and allows the fingers to come in. When you release it, it pushes the middle finger through the outer fingers, expanding them and holding them in place. These are from the aviation industry. You can get a whole pack of them off of Amazon, fairly cheap. Now we can see our cut line much easier. All right. So now I'm going to take the electric snips. I'm going to cut most of that off, and then I'm going to come back in with hand snips and cut the rest of it. Got to go hand snips from here because this is hitting this sleeve for the power steering reservoir. These are my go-to snips. I don't know what they are. I've had them for the longest. These are the longest ones I've had. I like them because they got the 45-degree angle on them. I also got these 90 degrees just recently. They work really good. But these are my go-tos. Now I cut most of it off And now I'm going to try and cut right on the line. If you cut most of it off first and then come back, it's a lot easier to cut, and you can get it fairly, really accurate with these. All right, that's a pretty nice cut. Now I gotta do some filing. File up is hard to get this in here, so I gotta file that off, file that down, file this corner, file this edge to where it fits our piece perfect. But you can see down here, like, it's pretty damn close. So you get the file out and start filing. I guess some of this is pretty important. So it's almost fitting, but you look right now, if I line up the edges, I got a gap right there. So you can't see it, but up here is still my cut line, so I haven't filed enough yet. So it may look like it fits and there's a huge gap. It may look like you need to file somewhere else, but reality, I gotta file up here to be able to move this up. So I gotta file this corner right here to match this piece. And it looks like I might have gone too far right there already, but we'll see, because I haven't filed to my cut line yet. So I'm filed to the cut line, and then we'll try it again. And I gotta be careful not to hit my rib nut right here. That's why I'm doing it like this and doing it very slow. All right, now you have to have witness marks. This right here is called a witness mark. You have to have things like that, because if you don't, then you don't know you can't be sure that you're putting it in the same exact position every single time when you take it on and off. So here's where we're at. Like, that's fitting pretty good, but up here it's a little high. So I think I'm going to trim my panel off to this, because I can't really trim no more on that. So I think once I did that, that'll be able to sit down in there. I might have to do a little bit more shrinking here, I don't know, maybe some Hammer and Dolly, but for the most part, most of it's fitting really nice. This one's just more difficult because of this tube. So I'm gonna file this to fit that now. So I'm gonna flip it over and I'm gonna scribe the inside of this. All right, as you can see, it's starting to fit a lot better now. And I'm literally just using a file, filing it down and putting it back and rechecking it. That's why I have the witness mark, so I can put it back to the same exact spot every single time. And then I'm taking a marker and marking where I need to trim. See, so I don't know if you can see it, but it starts overlapping right there, right where my finger's at. So I put a little mark. That's where it starts to overlap. So that's where I need to come and trim more, file more right there, just that spot, and then check it again. But everything else is fitting. I might have to file some more right in here to make this edge a little bit. I think my cut might have been off a little bit right there, because it's got a more of a gap right here, and down here I can see a little bit of a gap, and right there it looks really tight. So I'll probably file that a little bit more. I put a blue mark right there, file it a little bit more, and just file a little bit, check it, file a little bit, check it until it fits right. You don't want to file too much or sand too much or grind too much and have an excessive gap. We're trying to get perfect fitment. So do a little bit, check it, do a little bit, check it until it fits perfect. All right, it's fitting a little bit better, but now I can see that right here, right along this lower part right here, it's where it's super tight. Up here, it's just the corner now, it's just overlapping on the corner now up here, and that's almost coming in there. So a little bit more, and this bad boy will be ready to tack in there. I got this little plunger the other day. It's pretty cool. This is filled with acetone, and I just pump it and acetone comes out. It's pretty cool. Pretty happy about it. It's the small things in life. Now I'm gonna start tacking up at this end, work my way down, and you know, as I tack, every tack will shrink and pull the metal. Means our gaps are nice and tight. The distortion is going to be minimal because there's nowhere for the metal to go, and there's not going to be a whole lot of heat going into it. But that's why we do that. And as I get down, I'll move the things. I may have to hammer and dolly. If the metal starts overlapping, then I'll have to hammer and dolly the weld to stretch the weld back out to bring that metal back to where it's not overlapping. That's why I have so many clamps on it, hoping that does not happen. All right, I'm gonna get the welder set up and then start tacking. All right, so the welder I'm using is an Everlast 210 EXT. I'm gonna have my amp set to 55. I have a water cooler going for it. I upgraded and got a CK Worldwide flex head torch. You've seen me use this welder on the videos before, on the channel before. I love that thing. Yeah, it's a great welder for the price. Can't recommend it enough. All right. So now I'm going to start tacking this up. So like I said, I'm using 55 amps. The thickness of this material is 18 gauge, so it's roughly 0.048 to 0.050. So the rule of thumb is for every thousandths thickness is what your amperage should be set to. I'm going a little bit over and controlling it with the foot pedal, but I want to make sure that I got enough juice in the foot pedal to get the metal hot enough to where it'll melt real quick so I can get back out of it. If I have it too low, it's going to take a long time and dwell to build up that heat, and the heat's going to spread out and go over a larger area and put more heat into the panel, essentially. All right, let's get started. All right, that first weld, I had to squeeze it a little bit because it was just off, just a little bit. But you can see, so it's so tight, I didn't even use filler wire because the gaps are so good. Now I'm gonna continue on, and I'm only gonna add filler wire if I need to. Now I have the filler wire at ready. This little gap right here, I'm probably gonna need some filler wire. This gap, this is 023, yeah, 023 filler wire. My filler wire will not even go through that gap, so it's really tight. Do an attack about every ½ inch or so. Okay, right there, it feels like it might be you can see, so that tack tightened up that gap, which is good, but down here it's starting to push into it, like it might overlap. So I'm gonna hammer and dolly this and try and get this perfectly flush again. These two pieces of metal, I can catch my finger on it going that way. I want it flush. There we go. Put my clamp back in place right over here. Just I guess I can mention I'm using a Michael Furick Fupa number 12 cup. And then CK Worldwide Laser Tungsten 1/16 thick. I've been using the 1/16 a lot more lately on the thinner sheet metal. I've used to use 3/32, but this seems to be working a little bit better. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm tacking it all up, getting it nice and tacked every ½ inch or so, and I will do that all the way down, and then I'll come back and show it to you all tacked up, and then I can go through and fully weld the entire thing, hopefully in one pass. That hole is from the Clico, obviously. Same thing, same thing. Those holes will get filled in afterwards, but you can see It's nice and tight gap all the way down. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all tacked up, and then we'll come back. All right, she's all welded or tacked up. And most of these are all fusion weld. At the ends, I always add a little bit of filler material just because, so it doesn't burn out. But like, that is, I hardly used any filler wire. I only did a couple dabs. I did a couple dabs up here, one right there, and then one down there. That right there, I pulled my torch away. I moved right after I tacked, and my post flow didn't, took my post flow away, so it got that little circle. But now that we have everything tacked in place, tacked every half inch or so, I'm gonna fully weld this seam all the way up. Trying to do is least amount of stops as possible. That way I can be consistent through my weld. I might have to stop somewhere around in here if I get uncomfortable. Might have to readjust, but we'll see how it goes. So I got a fresh grind on my tungsten. Got my TIG finger to try and help with the heat. I'm only going to use the filler wire as I need it. All right, burned a hole up there. I was too close to the Cleco hole, burned a hole, so I'll put a copper backing plate on that and fill that in. But you can see my weld is consistent for most of my pass. I got stuck right here. I don't know what happened. My finger got stuck, and then I slowed down at the end and started adding more filler wire. But you can see how my heat affected zone got wider, so more heat went into that. But the heat affected zone is really consistent almost all the way through this. So I was fairly consistent all through my weld. So the shrinkage, the heat affected zone and the shrinkage is going to be consistent all the way through. Now I'm going to go in and put a copper backing plate up under all my Cleco holes and weld those up. The weld will not stick to the copper, so it acts as a good backing plate, heat sink for filling holes like this. Now this one up here is going to be more of a challenge because it's curved. So that's why I have extra copper plates. Alright, you can see it's all welded up. Now if you have a hole like I had there and you want to fill it in, I like to go around the edges of it and build up the edges so it doesn't burn back. If you build up your edges, if you don't build up your edges and you try and fill it, it can just keep burning back. So if you use less amperage and you just add filler to your edges and build up your edge, then you can just connect it all and just melt it in. So I'm gonna get the welder shut off, get this start grinding this thing down, and we'll get it smoothed out, hammer and dolly, and finished up. Before I start grinding it down, I wanted to show you something. So check this out. Like that, this is the worst spot of shrinkage right there. These were even coming all the way down. Like, look at that. That is barely any. But it's fairly consistent all the way down. Like right there is the worst spot. And then it levels back out. Up here is pretty bad because I put a lot of heat into this area. But for the most part, that's really, really good. And I got full penetration all the way through on the back side. So this will get sanded down and smoothed out as well. Now I'm going to sand this down, smooth it out real quick with the grinder, and then I'm going to use the planishing hammer to try and stretch that weld back out. Now, if you don't, a lot of people probably aren't going to have one of these planishing hammers. This one is from JRM tools. You can look him up on Instagram, Jason Millard. They're not cheap, but they are very, very nice to have. You can also do this stuff with Hammer and Dolly. I have another video on that. I'll link in the description. But yeah, you know, the goal of this video was to show why we spend our time making sure that our fitment is correct, and then we can go through and get consistent weld all the way through. So I'm gonna start sanding this down and then start finishing it off. To show you, it's a lot closer. Some of this I am gonna have to use hammer and dolly. It is what it is, because I only want to be stretching out that weld. That's all I need to stretch out. Everything else was good before I welded it. The only thing I changed was the weld, so I gotta focus on the weld. Much better. Looks like it's still, there's something right there like this flipped up, so I'll hammer and dolly that on the edge. But like that is up here, I can't get up into there because of that tube. But I can get up there with the dolly on the backside and hammer that out. So yeah, it's looking good. Again, I'm using two hands. I got one hand stabilizing. And then the other one going just lightly, just going over it lightly. It's a nice blend. And as you can see, I'm not applying a whole lot of pressure. It's just gliding across it. Just gliding across it and blending it out. Now I gotta do up here, and then we can go to the DA. But it's looking really, really good. All right, so everything's blended out now. Now I'm gonna go over with the DA and smooth out even better. But look at that. That's the inside. That's the back of the weld.
Here. Hey.
All right, there it is, all done. Nice and clean, smooth. Looks like I can do a little bit of hammer and dolly work right there, but other than that, like that baby turned out really, really good. Now we'll get it back into the car. All right, driver's side is back in. Nice and finished off up there in the front. Looks good. Next will be this front panel. Passenger side. All nice and clean. So, engine bay is starting to come together. All right, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share the videos, get some notifications. It all helps. All right, till next time.